where does the line sit for mistakes? Where is the actual action of a mistake taking place? Because it isn't the actual mistake you make most of the time, right? It's a thought, a temptation, a allowance of something to be present that shouldn't be. So something I've had a couple conversations this week about that. And I would just encourage anyone real quick, if there is a behavior that you're trying to change, if there is a question that you're asking of, at what point does this actually turn into something that's wrong? At what point does this become even just wrong for me? Think about it. For some people, it might be substance use. It might be sexual for some people. It might be food. It might be phone use or video games or TV or just media, even the news. You can look at it and be like, this doesn't really serve me very well when I enter into this or when I behave this way. Maybe it's how you talk to certain people. And if you've actually identified this as something that's not useful, and you've also probably had the thought of, how do I stop it? And you've probably gotten a couple answers. Well, you could do this, you could do this. And some of them might feel like white knuckling or powering through, but I want to offer it's not the full picture answer because there's nuance in every situation and experience, but in essence, it's as simple as the words are, put it that way. So in one area, it's like, yeah, don't do the thing. You struggle with substance use, don't use the substance. Problem solved, right? But it's not really that simple. Kind of is. If it's functionally that simple, don't do it. Just don't do it. But the whirlwind that happens internally and mentally, not the same. So for some people, they'll say, oh, I just need to not be around it. Great. Some people say, I just can't go to bars. Great. I just need to not be in the house. Great. For people who have identified, oh, I just need to do X, Y, Z, and you've done that and it still hasn't solved the problem, then you're probably incorrect. Because problems are solved when the formula is proper. So if the formula that you have implemented as, well, all I need is X, Y, Z, and you haven't found the freedom, then your formula was wrong. It might work for other people and it might be helpful to some extent, but it's not yours. So, for instance, let's say someone is trying to break a habit of phone use at night. And for them, it's actually really important. They think it's destroying their life because they don't get enough sleep. They're late to work. They feel like crap because they're not getting enough sleep. And they've identified this as the worst thing that they're doing, is staying up for an extra 2 to 3 hours every night just on their phone. Not only are they losing sleep, but they get starting to feel depressed and anxious because of all the influx of information and content. And of course, they're not sleeping well, and they don't get up early enough, and they don't get enough stuff done. And now they're stuck in a cycle of, well, I'm debilitated by my to-do list because I'm not getting stuff done. And when I get debilitated, I get stressed, and I go to my phone when I'm stressed. Now it's two things contributing to the phone problem. And this person identifies it as the biggest obstacle in their life. Now what? So here's what I'll say. If you can look at your life and ask yourself, what's the most important thing in my life? What matters more than anything? Will I allow ever anything to get in the way of that? And if the answer is yes, then the thing that gets in the way is more important. Maybe you have a moment of it being more important, but that's a failure in the moment. So if I say my belief and my faith is the most important thing in my life, and then at any time I do something against it, what I have said by my own words is this was the most important thing in my life, and then I let this thing be more important. So at least in that moment, I said this is the most important thing in my entire reality because I just let it beat the thing that I said was more important. And over time, if we do that consistently, we actually change the narrative in our brain to say this is the most important thing. That's bad. It's actually very bad. So you have to be careful what we say is important. We should mean it. I don't think that should be now avoid saying things are important because they still are, whether you put words to them or not, you still act out what's important to you. For most people that haven't identified that ends up just being self-righteousness and ego and a sense of self-centered behavior. You put yourself at the center of the universe and more or less worship yourself as true north. So we do still fall onto something. So if I say this thing is more important, it doesn't have to be even the most important thing. Let's say your substance use is an issue and someone says, well, is your family that you have at home more important? And you say, yes, they are. Okay, that doesn't even have to be the most important thing, but you've said it's more important than the substance use. And then you can say, is there ever a time where the substance use is loud and it doesn't get in the way of family? And for, some people, a lot of people, that's fine, especially with drinking or smoking. Sometimes people just do it and it doesn't get in the way of things. If it does for you, then the answer is there's never a moment where it's more important. And for that person, they might say, I have to have complete removal from this thing. So then the question is, how much of yourself and the world around you, your world, not that which intersects with others, are you willing to destroy to make sure this thing cannot succeed? This thing being the vice, the evil that you're fighting against. Maybe I have a tradition for the past 10 years. Once a month, go out with friends and we go to a bar, and it's not like we're all getting drunk, but we're, there's drinks and we're chatting, and that's an important tradition for me, maybe. All hypothetical in this instance. But I've said, this can't be allowed in anymore because it gets in the way of me acting out fully the life I want to live. Okay. Are you willing to give up that time with your friends? And if you say no, you're saying, well, that the substance use might have some more room. I'm a pretty adamant believer that people often severely underestimate what they have to do to gain control over situations. And sometimes it's both easy and not. If you say, my family is more important than any vice that gets in the way of that, or my salvation is more important than any vice that gets in the way of that, it's a problem. Well, then it becomes very easy, doesn't it? Because you already have a short list of what gets in the way of that, and you'll learn more over time. And that's developmental. But man, I feel tempted every time I go out with friends, and maybe I do end up having a drink or two, and I kind of fall off the deep end, and then you don't go do anything with that friend group anymore, especially not the bar. Man, I see the people on TV have a drink, and it makes me think, no more TV. Well, for how long? Maybe the rest of your life. And people say, this is how you get stuck in decades of struggling. Because what you're saying is, I don't want to give up my comfort. What you mean I might have to give up watching television? You're trying to quit a porn addiction, and it's gotten so severe that even just seeing people on TV really flares it up, even cable TV, not even mature TV. Okay, no more TV. All done. People are like, I can't give that up. Fine, that's fine. Then quit complaining about the vice and the addiction. You have to pick what's more important. And once you pick, it is not just it's figured out, but it creates a clear direction for where you're going to go. And you might have failures and setbacks and struggles, but be honest. Like, what the thing that you are working on. So the person who's staying up all night on their phone, Are you willing to buy a flip phone? No, it's too inconvenient. Okay. So you need to solve the problem or put in the steps to solve it. And people just teeter back and forth and they stay in a cycle for, decades. And that's how we get to a point where we look back at a life not well spent. Very rarely do I meet someone who regrets giving something up to attain something better. Very rarely. And even the people I've talked to who do say that, I look at their life now and just my perspective for a lot of them, I think I would say you still haven't gotten things figured out. And man, it's worth it every time to give up, and to give up aggressively on some of these things. Because the alternative is potentially a lifelong hold over you. So you might think I'm being aggressive. I would wager, I'll put it this way, because I can't speak to everyone's situation and I don't want to come across as dismissing addiction or actual obstacles to habit breaking. I'm generalizing, but I do want to encourage. Have you really gone all the way in trying to fight this? Have you? Are you willing to give up almost everything for the freedom you look for? Because I can guarantee you that most of what you're afraid to lose, you won't remember it when it's gone. It just won't be a big deal. It might be hard for a minute, but you'll be fine. And especially if you're older than 30, a lot of the things, I think about my generation and phones. It's like we lived without them. People have lived without things for all time. And you might think, well, but that was them back then. And, life's adapted to work a certain way now. Yeah. And you're not functioning in it. Well, I have to have a smartphone because my boss reaches out. Be willing to lose the job, or be willing to put up the boundary to say, hey, this gets in the way and I'm willing to fight for my health. And if this is going to cost me my job, that sucks. See ya. This is what I'm talking about. The willingness to lose everything to get what you need to survive. And this is what prioritization means. And most people, if they're honest with themselves, they prioritize feeling good, or they prioritize work. They prioritize just the wrong things from day to day. And they suffer for it. They act like they don't. And then they act like, I can't give these things up. You don't have to, but quit complaining. A lot of the things we desire are barely an arm's reach away. We're just unwilling to let go of the things that keep our arms hanging down instead of extending out to grab them. It just takes reach out and grab, but you're holding 100-pound weight and you can't lift your arm up to grab. But it's actually not hard when you just let go of the thing and reach out and grab. Most of what you want in life is just right there. There are definitely some things that aren't true in that regard, and it's fine. But ask yourself, have you really dropped everything that you could to make this happen? And sometimes in life we drop things and we get the healing we need, and some things can be reintegrated back. That can be dangerous, but it's also something that can be successful. So I just take that as an encouragement, And I'm not necessarily encouraging everyone to dramatically change actions. What I want to do here is, whatever your biggest struggle is right now, ask yourself how much you've really sacrificed to find freedom from it, and go from there. That's my thoughts this week. See y'all. Bye.